Nobody drives in LA. In this episode, we talk with recently elected Culver City City Council member Bubba Fish. We recorded this episode back in January, well before the fires came to town. And we wanted to hold off on releasing this episode out of respect for people who were impacted by the fires. If the fires are on your mind right now, Bubba was a guest on an episode of Bike Talk with Dorothy Wong from Altadena, where they discussed the fires and the response to that in detail. I would highly recommend checking out that episode. We'll link to it in the show notes. We also want to plug that if you have been affected by the fires, you can find resources at lacounty.gov/emergency. But for our discussion, we discussed complete streets, the absurd amounts of money spent on local elections in this past cycle, and the importance of turning up the bass. And with that, here's Bubba.
Hey everybody, or hey y'all, very excited to be here. I thought it was called Everybody Walks in LA, got the name wrong, and your name is much better.
Before we even get into it, already I have a point of clarification. Is it Culver City Council person or Culver City City Council person? Because the city is called Culver City.
Yeah, you're supposed to say city twice, which is really weird, but nobody does.
So hard.
Like on my
city.
At first I was doing it the right way. Like when I first announced it was like Bubba for Culver City City Council, and everyone was like, "That's so weird." So everybody campaigns
it's
Bubba
not elegant.
Yeah, it's not elegant. Yeah. If you want to be really accurate, it's City of Culver City, City Council. It would be city 3 times. Yeah.
Major for the Catch-22 fans.
I'm probably blowing the mic up by saying city.
A lot of sibilance. Yeah. I'm sure we were discussing previously doing an urbanist ASMR podcast. So maybe, we just do all sibilant sounds.
City.
Maybe we do a joke reel that is just all sibilant sounds from the podcast. So it's like for 30 seconds and see how that virally blows up.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe to kick off our discussion, Bubba, do you want to give yourself a brief introduction, tell folks about you, how you got here? Well, let me rewind a little bit. Usually we begin by kicking off our discussion with a very hard-hitting question, which is, how did you get here?
Yeah, literally to where we are, to this apartment.
Well, the listeners are going to love to know that I drove a car. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. But no, I'm in my home right now, but I just got back from a meeting. We were leasing. We're a 1-car house. We tried to be, we would love to be 0. My husband works and bounced around the county, but I leased an electric car. We just started. It's nice, But I try to get around. Well, I get around in so many different ways. I'm not like a one mode.
We're a multimodal podcast.
Oh my gosh. And that is a product of policy choices. Like during the campaign, the opposition tried to paint us as like radically, anti-car and, we hate cars. And
which usually means like you're a bike, or you're a cycle. Like I get pegged that a lot. When I was just on neighborhood council, people would always be like, I was the transportation committee co-chair, and people would always accuse me of being like a bike guy. And I was like, that's just like, that's so weird, because to me, I don't think of myself.
Yeah. It's one way I get around. And I typically, like most people, choose the most efficient way. And where I live, the most efficient way, because of the policy choices we've made, is usually not a car. It was this morning, but it's usually train, it's usually bus, it's usually bike, walk, whatever.
But when a car is needed, that is because of policy choices too.
Right.
And we don't ever want to blame people for driving who have to drive because they've been put in a position where that's the only way to get around. We just want to get them freed from their cars, if that's possible.
Yeah, totally. And then how did I get here in general?
Yeah.
Big picture. Yeah, big picture. I guess the start of my story was I always liked, biking and taking transit. But I grew up in a really car dominant city, Houston. I didn't have any of these things growing up. So when I went to college and I lived at USC and I got to take, the train, to downtown and experience the freedom of that and got to bike around campus, it kind of changed my perspective. And then I got into a really bad car crash in 2014. I was hit from behind by a car going 40 miles an hour at a stoplight. He should not have been driving. He was, he didn't know like who the president was. And like we were put into the same ambulance together. And I heard them asking him these questions he didn't know. So he shouldn't have been behind the wheel. And it was like 5 a.m. I was taking my friend to the airport and coming back. And if anyone had been in the back seat, they probably would have died. And that changed everything for me. It gave me like mild, just for a short period, trauma. I got over it, but it did make me look for other ways of getting around. So I sold my car and I started biking, started taking the bus, taking transit everywhere. My husband and I chose Palms to live because the Culver City stop, the Palm stop hadn't been created yet, but Culver City was too expensive. So we moved into like near the Palm stop on the E line so that I could get to work and then moved into Culver City as soon as we could afford it. And so I started volunteering with Bike Culver City. 2 guys found me who were creating Streets for All, and I became a founding member of Streets for All, a local advocacy group trying to make LA County more sustainable, safe, all of that. And I fell in love with the work and the progress that we were making. We abolished parking minimums here in Culver City. We created the first truly complete street in the region through our downtown. There's so much that we accomplished, and those wins got really addicting. And I just kept investing more and more of my time in that, and it became my life. Then I was, approached by a couple mentors after we had a conservative council for a bit there. And, they started rolling back a lot of the progress that we had been making, including Move Culver City, which became a hot topic in the election. And then, I was in school at the time at UCLA. I was approached like, hey, think you might be good for this. And a couple of folks in the community thought so too. And I really just decided who else, I might as well, because I have the policy background. I should take the leap and try to make good change here. So that's when we decided to go all in.
Can you define what is a complete street?
Yeah, a complete street is a street that has features that prioritize the safety of all modes. So that means pedestrian infrastructure, cycling and scootering, a bus lane for prioritizing bus travel, and then a lane for, general vehicle traffic. So that hadn't really been done in Southern California, with the I think My Figueroa project has elements of it from, I think that was put in like 2017 or 2018. There's elements, I think, there, but Move it was like a spaceship had landed when it first landed here. People really were like, what is going on? What is this? And it was a quick build too, which people were not used to seeing quick build infrastructure. It was before the Venice project, Venice Boulevard for All. It was before the Hollywood project, these other big projects. It was, pylons and delineators and all of that were used. So people were shocked.
Can we do another nested term define?
Yes.
Because I think Move Culver might have predated my time. What is a Move Culver, and also what is quick build?
Yeah. So Move Culver City is a quick build project. Quick build means, using temporary materials to test out whether we can make a street safer. So right now, most of the streets in LA County are designed around one mode, obviously cars. It's the only way for a lot of people to dependably get around. And it's because of the design choices we've made, like Eric was alluding to. So a quick build project uses temporary and much cheaper materials to test out new configurations and new designs to try to make cyclists safe, pedestrians safe, even drivers, and prioritize people using transit. So Move Culver City was one of the first quick builds in Southern California, because quick builds really as a concept only became legal with a Scott Wiener bill called SB 922 that passed in, I think, 2021. As soon as it passed, Culver City was able to put this quick build project in the ground without going through environmental reviews. So this bill allowed that Scott Wiener from San Francisco passed, allowed Culver City to put this really transformational project in, and it became like a lightning rod.
Maybe before we get to how we got here today, I just want to jump in and say, it's funny because when people talk about, like, what I always characterize it as like a street upgrade, basically, because, people talk about road diet and that sounds miserable or whatever. Like, diet? No, I hate diets. with Hollywood specifically, which just got a reconfiguration. I remember seeing comments and someone was like, "Are you crazy? You've reduced it to 2 lanes." And I'm like, there's not a reduction of two lanes. There's still 2 general lanes for vehicles, a turning lane, that's a lane, 2 bike lanes, that's 2 lanes, and then 2 lanes of car storage. Those are lanes too. Those are all decisions about what to do. I always think of like the street as like a table with a limited number of seating around it. And it's like, is it all cars and like 2 of them are asleep? Those would be the, the parked cars or whatever. Or do you want to allow a cyclist to sit there, or do they need to share it with a car and like sit behind someone or have someone on their lap? Like, so it's just really thinking about like the geography of it. Like, no, lanes are never getting taken away. A lot of times they're getting added because the bike lane takes less space. And, but yeah, it's just something to think about. But maybe we do want to get to how we got here today, yeah? Because I have my sad story. Not we don't talk about how we got here, big picture, but I'm champing at the bit to share my sad story. So I took the 92 as I usually do. I was going to take the 92 to the, I think, 33 route over here, but then I took it to the E line, which that's not the. I left my book on the bus. So I'm a big, I lose a lot of, I don't want to say I'm a big loser. I lose a lot of things. And I'm hoping that because I know which bus route, the Metro has a thing. So you just fill it out and you're like, this is what I lost. This book, it has this colored cover. It was at this time on the 92 route. I believe my bus number was 3899, but I don't want to mention that and be wrong, but that's just like my not quite photographic memory, my fuzzy photographic memory. I'm like, I think it said 3899, but yeah, I left a book on there, so that sucks. But you lose stuff. So I don't know. I feel like I'll report back in the next time we record and hopefully be like, I got it back, because
I've recovered something from the lost and found before.
It seems to me that you're much more likely to recover something from that you leave on Metro than if you lose it anywhere else.
I left my employee badge, my Metro, because I work for the chair of Metro, not speaking in that capacity on this podcast, but I left it on an LADOT commuter express bus, and for weeks and weeks tried to get it back. Finally got it back, like literally 8 weeks later, probably. Wow. And it was the greatest feeling ever. Like, wow, my community, my county cares about me enough to get this badge back to me.
I've got other books in the meantime, so it's okay, but it sucks. But other than that, my commute was pretty, just in the interest of being honest and not just being boosters or just being negative about public transit, because I feel like that's what most people are. Like I did have a guy that got on with a Bluetooth speaker. Don't do that. Or if you do, I'm going to say this, and this might be a hot take, invest in a better Bluetooth speaker, because all I could hear was like hi-hat. And that's so obnoxious, just this clicking.
Get some bass. Yeah,
get some bass. If you're going to play music on the train, turn up the bass.
The announcement would say that instead of, please do not play loud music, or if you do, please make sure there's enough bump and bass to keep us all turned. Right. Thank you.
I'm so looking forward to the new trains that are coming in with the different seating style, because if anyone that rides the train now, it's like a bus style seating where there's rows of seats. I'm tall. It's very uncomfortable for me. Like, I can't always fit my legs I have to turn sideways. I have also freakishly long legs, even given my height. So I have to turn sideways, and then it looks like I just don't want to have anyone sit next to me. And who doesn't like to sit with like their back to the wall? You go to a restaurant or a bar or something, like you don't want to sit like facing the entrance and then have like all this space behind you. It just
like when we go to restaurants, my dad sits in the corner because he's like, this is what the mafia does. No one can hit you.
I just had a 3-year-old.
No one can put a hit on you.
I had friends that were visiting and they had a 3-year-old, and I told them that too. I was like, we're going to sit in the corner, because I was like, okay, here's our plan. We sit in the corner so we can keep an eye. If anyone comes in here and does anything, there's the exit, and there's a mirror so we can kind of. And he's like, okay.
It's actually a good point about safety, though.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that, because I've been looking at the new train. That's a good point about safety, that when you're seated, facing in with your back against the wall, it's probably a little safer to know.
I think so. You're looking at see everybody. Everybody's making eye contact with each other, if they want, or easily. And also just with being able to go between cars, like it's a minor annoyance, someone who's dealing with schizophrenia and expressing that in a, loud manner or whatever, but you can just get up and walk to a different car. That's what I would have done if we'd had a different train. I wasn't like using the transit app to be like, this guy's being obnoxious, but yeah, it's just nice to have the option of just going to a different car.
I was planning to bike here, because bike lanes are a thing with Culver right now. I often bike to my friend's yoga class, Alex Gordado at Core Power in Culver City. I couldn't do it today. I didn't have enough time. So I got my one wheel. I wheeled down to the E-Line station in Santa Monica in downtown and then took the train here to Culver and I met up with Eric outside. I found that at the downtown Santa Monica station, oftentimes you'll have two trains on each platform. And when you get there, it is not clear which train is leaving first.
Which one you're supposed to get on.
So the up top signs will say East LA 3 minutes.
It happens at Union Station to me every single time I come home. I'm like, which one's leaving? Which one is just sitting here for 10 minutes?
And I've had many times, not many times, but I'm probably about a 50-50 success rate that I'll get on a train like, okay, this one looks like it's been here. This one's more crowded. This one's going first. And it does not go first. And it bumps my day down by 15 minutes or whatever. So I've been trying to figure that out. And two, so I transferred from the E-Line to the 90 to get to Glendale, the 90 bus. And I noticed on the buses, though, the thing that I need to know most is, what stop is next? But with the bus displays, you'll get, it's December whatever day. It is 12:30 p.m. Slowly scrolls by.
Along, yeah.
Then it's like, have a nice day.
Yeah.
And then it slows by. Next stop is...
Go Dodgers.
Yeah. And then we're at the stop. I'm like, wait, where am I?
Yeah.
It occurred to me today that is probably holdover technology from the 90s or early aughts when, having scrolling text on a little LED bubble screen was a big deal. But, now from a purely pragmatic standpoint, I would just simply love it to say, next stop is, and like a train stop.
Just flash
monitor.
It. Doesn't need to crawl.
So I would love those two things.
I'll bring that to the boss.
Well, and honestly, one thing I might have mentioned it on the podcast before, but I like, you go to other cities that are less multilingual than Los Angeles, and they have announcements in multiple languages, and you're like, just if there's time on the bus, like, make the announcement. It's not super intrusive if you hear it in Spanish and Chinese or Tagalog or something too. You know what I mean? Like, because I don't know, I feel like probably English language bus riders are less, confused by the system because everything's in English. All the signage is in English, There's usually some Spanish signage too about like route changes and stuff like that. This is the day that the 96 is becoming the 296, by the way, that we're recording this. That's going to be exciting for some people. The 96 goes, I don't know where the north end is. I want to say Burbank or maybe San Fernando, the city of San Fernando, and it goes down to Chinatown right now, but it's going to be going to Lincoln Cypress Station, and then you'll hop on the A line and go to Chinatown that way instead. Part of the next gen bus changes, I think, that the buses now feed the train lines more than they used to, because most of the bus routes predate most of the train. So sometimes it would be like, it'd be super convenient if there was a bus that took me to the closest B-line station. Now there's the 182. So,
and this is also to say, so those are my two minor gripes with how I got where I was going this week. I would also just love to say that because I took the train to work yesterday, I am currently pursuing a sustainability degree at Santa Monica College. And I am in my final class. It is environmental ethics, and it is by far the worst class I have ever taken. My professor loves logical structure as the least practical class, and I'm having a really hard time with it. My final is due tomorrow at 10 a.m. And I was on a lot of shoots this week, which are bonkers early hours, bonkers late hours. They were busy, so I had no time to get caught up on my studies. So yesterday, while I was taking the train and the bus to work, I was able to grind out the first third of my environmental ethics final paper. And so hopefully I can get the other 2/3 of it out through the rest of today.
That is the dream, right? Like being able to utilize the time that we spend in transit.
I also lost my questions that I had for you. And I told Kyle, I don't have a lot of questions prepared usually beforehand because we want it to be kind of a natural conversation. But being on I was just like the whole time on the train, I was like, ooh, I want to ask about I wanted to ask about Houston, if that informed.
Can I show you something?
Yeah.
Okay, what I have here is every piece of mail that was sent, negative and positive. So one thing about our race is that we had $410,000 spent against us to try to stop progress. They did polling and found that we were doing really well. So they spent $90,000 of that 400 just against our campaign, right? Just against me.
Yeah.
And they did a couple strategies. One was to say that I want to ban cars. So I'm going to show you, that was an early one that just said, Bubba Fish wants to ban cars in Culver City. So you can see that.
Because it's on a flyer.
Right. And this, you can check it out.
The lane ahead.
And they use like pictures of move and pictures of traffic. So this one says, look what happens when Bubba gets his way. Bad traffic for us, empty bike lanes for Bubba. So you can see that one there. Wow. And then you asked about Houston.
Oh, you aspirate. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm from Missouri and we say Houston and human being.
Yeah,
Houston.
We definitely say Houston. Yeah. But that's where I grew up, and in a forum I said,
it's so coded. I mean, they can't see this, but it's just like, this guy's a hick. He has there's a cowboy hat and cowboy boots.
Yeah. They try to make you look like you don't actually care about Culver City, where I've lived for 7 years. And I've lived in LA for almost now longer than I lived in Houston.
Houston is home for Bubba Fish.
Right. So like when Houston's done a really good job of housing its unhoused population. They've gotten over 60% of their unhoused population off the street.
Which we should want to be like Houston in that regard.
Yeah, so that's obviously what I was... obviously they took it out. And they showed this picture of me from the forum where I said that, and they took out my rainbow. I had for Pride, it was Pride Month, so they photoshopped out my Pride... my Pride pin.
That ought to be something that you have to put on a flyer, like this has been photoshopped or this has been taken out of context.
Right. No, but they have all sorts. So this is, you get to look through.
Viewers or listeners aren't seeing, there's one with a fish because it's like your last name is Fish.
Yeah, this one says there's something fishy about.
And it's a guy wearing coveralls that say Bubba.
Yeah. So, and this is what happens when I'm on record, and I've been an advocate for sustainable communities and for safe streets. And one of the big funders of this was a commercial developer that owns several parking garages in the area. And one of the parking garages is on the move, Culver City. When you fight for different ways of getting around, people that are financially invested in the existing ones. We even had a car dealership pump in a couple $1,000s into the conservative Democratic Club. So that was a big, fault line in this election.
I'm a terrible driver. I'm bad at it. I know this. I don't like it. I'm always paranoid that I'm going to hit someone or someone's going to hit me, something like that. The thing that I would just love to stress to drivers and car people is that when you have bike lanes and when you have protected infrastructure for other modes of getting around, it takes so much pressure off of you when you do drive. If I'm driving next to a protected bike lane, I know that there's a far lesser chance of me surprise hitting someone or someone cutting in front of me or whatever. Having methods for other people to get around, safer outside of a car, it makes things easier on you as a driver. And I appreciate that so much until I can send my car back to hell.
One thing to always keep in mind is that half of the cars on the road are going fewer than 5 blocks. And that's not just because people are lazy and car-brained. It's because people want to ride their bikes, but they don't feel safe because there's not infrastructure. They want to walk, but the sidewalks aren't non-existent or whatever. Or they would take the train, but the train doesn't, or the bus only comes every 40 minutes because there's cars in the way. And so it's like this self-reinforcing thing that just keeps. So yeah, if you could imagine, even most and something like 700,000 people in Los Angeles County don't have even access to a car. So You'll never car brain your way to like, okay, if everyone just gets a car and drives to everything, how wide do we need to make the roads? How many parking lots do we have? We'll never be able to accommodate that. No city has ever accomplished like car brain utopia, It's like, so the better option is make it safe and sustainable and practical for people to get out of their cars that want to, because something like 70% of people say they want to get out of their cars. But anyway.
I mean, that is the future we're fighting for. We know that in LA County, the number one predictor of whether and how many cars you do own is your income. And so when people talk, we had some candidates going around saying that, oh, really, we needed to take out the bike lane and put a new car lane in because the working class people need it to get to work.
I'm a working class person that cycles to work too, by the way, and I save $13,000 a year by not owning a car, so which allows me to live in a neighborhood where I work.
That's right. And in Culver City, the people that take the bus that are going to be impacted by the fact that we no longer have a separate facility for bikes, those bikes are going to be in the bus lane. They're going to be going 12 miles an hour when the bus wants to go 35. That bus, the average income of that bus rider is less than $35,000 family household income. Mm-hmm. The average household income of Culver City residents, $115,000. So they did a poll and they asked people, what do you think of move? Do you want changes? Do you want no changes? Do you want it to be removed entirely? A plurality of people said changes. It was only a poll of voters in Culver City. Well, you're asking people who predominantly make $115,000 a year to opine on something that serves predominantly people who make $35,000 or less a year.
Right, and are commuting in here for work, and because they can't afford to live here, so commute out.
So it's like let's ask people what we should do about a bus lane that serves people you're not asking.
This is so often how transit conversations are, because with like the BRT that they're trying to do through Eagle Rock, people are like, well, I would never use that. Well, that's because I live in Eagle Rock, so my opinion should count more. Transit networks aren't, for the most part, they're not little jeepney rides that go around your neighborhood. It's like, no, this is for bringing people in and out. And it's a transit network, not just it's not a transit fragment. And if everyone gets to decide their fragment, then you don't get a transit network that is usable.
That's how we end up with the bus lane that the 4 uses on Santa Monica Boulevard, having a bus lane in West Hollywood, then not one in Beverly Hills, and then having one again in Santa Monica. It's like, yeah, then you just make it a worse experience for everyone who uses that bus to get to work, to get to school, to get anywhere.
Back to our interview with Barry a couple of episodes ago, Barry Snell from Santa Monica. He mentioned that the population of Santa Monica is like, give or take a verse, like 80,000 ish. But with when people commute into the city to work, it's more like 200,000 people, are in Santa Monica on any given day. And, most of those people are coming in to work, right? Do you have any ideas or possible solutions for how to make that decision-making process more equitable for the folks that have to commute into a city, when you have things like, very wealthy people making decisions for not very wealthy people who are taking transit?
So we had several public meetings about, our complete street. And there was an outpouring of please don't rip this out. Please don't water it down. Please don't take out the protected bike lane from people across the region. And the folks on that dais decided, well, if you're not a Culver City resident, then your opinion matters less. And I don't think that's good decision making when it comes to transportation policy, because like you mentioned, it's a network. It serves, like, the workers of our city are the backbone of our city. If we're not serving our workers, then our city becomes a worse place to live. There are cities, go to Tahoe, go to cities that have become really expensive, that used to have thriving small business communities, and see what's happened. A lot of those stores can't even function anymore because their workers have no place to live and no affordable way to get there. We have to prioritize not just the people who can afford the $3,300 a month rent in Culver City. We have to prioritize everyone who lives, works, plays, recreates, and enjoys this beautiful city, because as provincial as some people want to be with our city boundaries, they don't mean a lot to most people in the region.
Yeah. I did know someone that lived in Santa Monica, and she said she hadn't seen her mom in a long time because she lived in a different city. And I was like, what city? And she said Los Angeles. And I was like, what? Okay, that's crazy to me, because most people don't say like, hey, I'm going out of town today. Like, oh, where are you going? Culver City. It's like, no, you're still in Los Angeles for as in quotes. But the last,
you've seen the shape of Culver City, by the way,
it's shaped like a Star Trek Type 2 phaser from the original series.
Yeah, kind of. Okay.
It's got some weird annexations. It's like 42 annexations.
So once you look at that, you will understand why it's important to listen to the whole region, and because people don't walk into the little sliver of Culver City on the west side. That's like this tiny little branch.
Oh, and even when people talk about stuff in Culver City, they talk about like the Museum of Jurassic Technology. And I'm like, technically that's on the Palm side, and then because but that just shows how that idea is blurred. Most of the Culver City Arts District is outside of the city of Culver City. So it's like these borders and boundaries are not, they're municipal fictions for most of us, unless you live here and it's like who you pay your taxes to, or what, if you get your junk mail, what it says on your address. But this reminds me, because the time we met, I'm going to remind you, is I think it was like 2019. We were talking about the book Better Buses, Better Cities by Stephen Higashide. And I believe it was at the co-op in this building or around the corner. And
in the building.
Was that 2019?
Yeah. And
that was the last time I used a ride hail service, as far as I remember. And I think that a lot of times people think if you don't own a car, they're like, what? I get two questions, like, oh, you must stay in all the time and not go anywhere. Or, oh, do you must just use Uber and Lyft all the time. And I'm like, not really. Like, not if you've...
I've not used ride hails.
I used Lyft and I had taken the bus to get over here and read the book on the bus. And then I was standing on the busy street out here, and it was dark and it was so noisy, and it was just giving me anxiety, just like triggering all these. It was just so hostile, and I was like, I need to get out of here right away. So I that was like the last time I used Lyft, because I was waiting for the bus. It has changed so much since then. Like, I remember I was telling Kyle, there used to be a gigantic dirt parking lot where we are now, basically, and. When I came over here to talk about Better Buses, Better Cities, I was like, I don't recognize any of this. It feels like there's like a community here now where there used to be a parking lot.
Totally. I mean, the E-Line station used to be an entire parking lot. Now it's, several hundred units of housing. Where we are now was one of the first TODs in Culver City. It's 115 units, I think. And now we've abolished parking minimums in Culver City, so we can keep going and keep hopefully creating more housing near transit and creating more communities that are like this one. I feel so lucky to live here.
On my side of town, Silver Lake, we get a lot of pushback about transit-oriented development, saying like neighborhood character and all this and that. But when, and then I always want to point out to people in Silver Lake that we have 5-story buildings from 1914 that have 0 parking because they were built on transit lines. That's neighborhood character. I'm like, yes, I want to return to that neighborhood character, because that is what Silver Lake developed in the teens and 20s around transit as a streetcar suburb, like so many places. And then it got downzoned in the 50s to use single family housing, uniplexes, as a weapon against, in economic segregation, because they're like, oh, you can't use housing deeds anymore. Then we're going to use economic segregation by only allowing 77% of the city to be for uniplexes, because a duplex that's too much density. That's twice the density that's legal, but in the name of neighborhood character. And I always say, like, if you like a historic preservation overlay zone or something like that, you should part of that should be like, well, you have to use historic transit here too. You can't use cyber trucks. Sorry, they didn't exist in this Angelino Heights. Horses and walking and mule-drawn transit and cable cars. That's it.
It is funny that we only ascribe neighborhood character to buildings and homes when it's, to your point.
I was just doing a mostly architecture-centered walk in Silver Lake, and it is like I had a thought because I was looking at images online, and you look at these homes from the 30s, these modernist homes, and they still feel like super modern. But then this is neither here nor there, but you see the cars, and the cars are like, whoa, there's like a weird disconnect. Like they're driving cars from the 1920s that look very, very old and antique to this house that still looks futuristic and modern somehow and timeless. But yeah.
I feel like from that, I think cars might be a symptom of disposable culture. And that if you think about it, when you buy a car, like, you know, you lease a car for 3 or 4 years, you get a new one, or you buy a car and...
Yeah, your car value goes down every second. Your home value goes up.
As someone who does a lot of work in like zero waste and that side of sustainability, I think a car is just like the most evolved form of throwaway culture. You know, you dump $50,000-$60,000 on this hunk of metal that you're going to have for 5 to 10 years to dump it, get a new one. There you go. Keep consuming. You know, and even like looking at our highway system, it's truly just like designed to maximize consumption, you know, maximize consumption of the car parts, maximize consumption of the cars, of the fuel, of the rest of it. And part of me is like, oh, like those, you know, the economic planners who built this really knew what they were doing because it made a lot of money and a lot of like jobs for people, but also it's colossally wasteful. And like, we're just digging ourselves a, you know, massive planet-sized grave with all of this stuff. So I don't know what do you do with that?
Yeah, I think the hope is coming from local electeds right now and our state legislature, our county supervisors. Like we have a real opportunity. The entire West Side, you know, for the most part, just got a progressive majority in this last election. I just got back from a meeting with some West Hollywood and some Santa Monica electeds, and you know, we're working together and supporting each other on how do we move forward as a city, or as a region, because we are intertwined. Our destinies are intertwined. So,
and listeners, we are going to do some not West Side episodes, I promise. Because I looked back and I realized, I was like, wow, I think 6 of our 8 guests have been West Siders so far, and I don't live on the West Side.
Yeah. But that's important too, and that's I in my work as a transportation deputy, I represent or my boss Janice Hahn represents the Southeast LA region. So we're trying to get the Southeast Gateway line, you know, serving.
I told them they should call that like the Little India line or like the Darjeeling Limited or something, because it goes to Little India. That's why I will be taking it primarily, will be to go to Little India, get Indian food.
Yeah, it's gonna serve Artesia and, you know, a lot of those cities that have been, you know, ignored for a long time.
Southeast Los Angeles is very ignored, I feel like. And I feel like honestly a lot's happening over there right now with multimodality and just urbanism and stuff that would surprise people. So it would be worth getting somebody on from Southeast Los Angeles. But one thing we do bring up a lot of times is because Culver City is just one of 88 cities in Los Angeles County. It's the 43rd most populous city. So it's right there in the middle almost, right behind Rancho Palos Verdes, right ahead of San Gabriel. And so we always say, like, is there a case to be made for why someone that doesn't live in Culver City, one of the people who's, you know, any of the non-40,000 people that live here, why we should care about what's going on in Culver City? We asked that of the Santa Monica candidates, and they talked about how Santa Monica is such an engine of, you know, development, sustainability, and that.
Yeah, I would say Culver City has become a hotbed for the entertainment industry. We are like quickly becoming, you know, Hollywood 2.0. Basically, we have TikTok, we have Amazon Studios, we have Warner, we have Apple, we have it's and Sony, of course, since forever. So those are 5 major entertainment companies.
You know, they tried to change their name to Hollywood back in the 30s. Culver City did, yes, yeah. If you watch all these movies, because the first studios came out, this is like a side thing that it's just, I'm obviously so eager to talk about because I think it's so funny. In the 19-teens, the first studios came here. And so very early in the film industry, and like at the same time that Hollywood still had studios, the film studios are coming over here. And then they started putting on the end of, you see in a lot of Hollywood movies that are, Hollywood in the metonymic sense, like American commercial films. They'll say at the end of the credits, you know, made in the heart of Screenland, or where the films are made, but they're Culver City studios that they're saying that. And so once Hollywood was annexed by Los Angeles and there's no place called Hollywood anymore. On a map, Culver City was like, well, now's our chance to change our name to Hollywood. And that's why the city of Los Angeles codified Hollywood's borders and put in that was like the first, okay, this neighborhood rather, has official borders. It's called Hollywood. You can't call it Hollywood. The name is spoken for.
That is wild. I had no idea.
So it's like, so sometimes it'll say at the end of a movie from that era, like Culver City, where the Hollywood films are made.
Wow, where the Hollywood films are made. Yeah. Wow.
Because, what movie studios are still left in Hollywood? Paramount.
CBS? That's not Hollywood.
Paramount gave me a lot of guff for having my one wheel on campus up there. And I was just wheeling out, probably about like 80 pounds of food for donation pickup at the front of the place, like I'm doing the Lord's work here.
We're anti-Paramount now.
Not sponsored by Paramount.
Yeah.
In the span of 15 minutes, I had one person tell me, okay, you're good. Then I had 3 people progressively angrier tell me, no, get off that thing. No, I'm getting my supervisor. Are you supposed to be here? Where's your pass? I'm like, whoa.
I've heard that about the studios. They don't allow people biking in. They don't allow any other way of getting in.
I had a very similar experience at Dodger Stadium when I went there for an architectural tour, and it was just like caused chaos because I walked in after taking the bus there, and I was like, I have to walk through these car gates because at the time there weren't even sidewalk entrances.
How dare you?
They sent a security and they like insisted that I ride with them. I was like, okay.
For a while, there was like no way to get a COVID test without being in a car. It was like all these driver.
I was in Hawaii when that happened because I couldn't go overseas because of travel restrictions. And I was like, what are we going to do? Because to go from one island to another, you have to get a COVID test. And I was like, but I don't have a car. And there were no cars for rent at the time because they rely so much on tourism that they'd sold their entire fleets of cars since no one was coming there for a while. So we really were, it was really, I was like, can I take a bus to the coast and then walk up, and they okayed it. But like every single other person was in a car, and I was like, this is a nightmare. There are worse places to be trapped than Hawaii, but.
So are you just like in line?
Yeah,
like
I just
car,
walk,
car,
yeah.
car, you, car.
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's like going through the drive-through on foot or something. It's just like, that's not allowed.
Which should be allowed.
I know. You can't even go through on a bike.
We actually tried to get a bill written. We tried to find an author at Streets for All for stopping any quick serve, drive-throughs from preventing pedestrians or from not serving, from discriminating against pedestrians.
I derailed. You were talking about Culver City's role in the region and why we should pay attention to it. People that live outside of.
We have these massive entertainment companies. We are such a economic engine now with these large companies. We have people commuting in from across the region. We have only 1 unit of housing for every 4 jobs. So if we address our housing crisis, if we make it more affordable to live here, we could be and we are a city of opportunity, but only for those who can afford it. But if we really accelerate housing here, we could have so many people that could live and work in the same city. And that's live, work, and play in the same city. That's really promising. And that's, obviously the more sustainable route. That's climate resilience, but also makes our streets safer, reduces traffic.
It makes most people happy, except for the people who are really have their brains broken and are like, a 15-minute city, that sounds like a prison. I can't, and like, no, you're allowed to leave.
You're allowed to leave. This isn't Fox News. You're allowed to leave the 15-minute city.
It's not like a grocery cart that gets to the edge of the parking lot and stops. Like, oh no, I've gone more than 15 minutes.
We're really well situated. 56% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from passenger vehicles, which is way higher than the state average of like 27%, because we've gotten renewable power grid. Like we're in the Clean Power Alliance. So any building, any home can get 100% renewable energy. The biggest way that we pollute is passenger vehicles.
Well,
so
Culver City's location, I believe, was Harry Culver was a developer who worked for Isaac Van Nuys before, and then he started developing his own community, and he did it because it was halfway between, basically, like it was between downtown and Santa Monica, and he was like on a train line, and so trains ran here until 1953. So it's because of mass transit that Culver City exists, And then like there's just no two ways about it. It's like that's why this is here. It warrants repeating because people still all the time when I talk about like the old train routes, they're like I had no idea that we had the largest interurban electric railway network in the planet's history to this day. And then we ripped all that out in the 50s.
And the beginnings of a bicycle superhighway. Yeah.
Which I say, even as impractical as that is, just finish it. Make it. It'll be like Angel's Flight. It'll be fun.
Can you elaborate on bicycle superhighway?
I think we talked about the California Cycleway a bit before, but the California Cycleway was something that was actually, they're not mayors in Pasadena back then. I forget what they're called. The major domo of Pasadena he was a developer too, because transit and development went hand in hand. Henry Huntington, who owned the Pacific Electric Railway, also was a land developer, and that was seen as the main amenity. Anytime a new housing tract would open up, it would be like a single seat ride from here to Broadway, like for 6 cents or whatever. But it was also a loss leader for him because it wasn't true public transit. It was owned by a private individual, and he was anti-labor and not super popular. And then he died, and they didn't update the trains very much. He basically had a monopoly on. Anyway, and he's the one that stopped the California Cycleway too. It wasn't the car. A lot of times people say it was the rise of the car that killed the California Cycleway. But the Pasadena mayor equivalent was building this elevated wooden bicycle tollway from Pasadena to downtown. Somehow it was supposed to be downhill in both directions, but he never got it finished. And it wasn't that great because and there were no elevators to get up to it. So you had to lug your bike up. Yeah.
Something from Museum of Jurassic Technology. Yeah. And it's downhill in both directions.
Maybe the downtown terminal, you would have climbed 200 stories with your bike or something.
Yeah, if you have to climb a mountain before you start then it is like
the concept wasn't great also because anyone that rides a bike knows that yes, it would be fun to be separated from cars and not have your life in danger, but also the things you want to go to are on the street level. The amenities are all down there. So just being in a unshaded, elevated wooden road over everything, it would be novel, but
it comes up on my news feed, on my Twitter feed every now and then. It's somewhere in Asia they made a cycle path in the middle of the freeway, and it's you look at it and they're like, wow, look what they did. It's a shaded cycle, and I'm like, they're in a tunnel in the middle of the freeway. That sounds miserable, and why would I ever use that?
My least favorite part of the Los Angeles River bicycle path is the part where you're going along the 5 in Atwater, and the 5 is just right there, and it's so loud and it's so obnoxious and noisy and polluted, and you're like, whenever you're away from that, you're like, this is so much nicer. So
can you give us a brief, overview of what is going on with, the protected bike lanes? Because the bike lanes were built by a previous council. The next council is like, no, get rid of them.
Yeah.
And also maybe because that is the reason I think a lot of people are talking about Culver City right now is because of what's going on there. But also just bigger picture, I'm curious, what exactly, because when Culver City's city council went more rightward, that's also when Santa Monica's was. And I was like, what's going on over there? Because especially Santa Monica's the People's Republic of Santa Monica. You're like, what?
Well, let's talk about that. So what we're seeing on the west side is if we do not address housing affordability, we are going to continue to struggle to get progressive candidates elected. Full stop. Mm-hmm. We saw that in CD 11 with the election of Tracy Park. Mm-hmm. We're seeing that. We saw that in Santa Monica in the last election. I won by 430 votes. Wow. You saw the money that we were up against from special interests, right wing, from landlord groups, from commercial developers, but also real estate investors, MAGA folks. All of them pitched into the 400, and I won by 430 votes. I started walking at the end of March. I announced in January. I knocked 20,000 doors with my campaign, 4,000 me personally, 3,000 Aaron, my husband. It is not, we have a very progressive electorate in Culver City and in Santa Monica, but we have one of the most progressive. We voted for Gascon. We voted against Prop 36. We voted for Prop 6. Like, we went against the ways that the state went. Yeah. So we have a very progressive electorate. But getting the word out is so hard for progressive candidates because they don't have the money, they don't have the funds. So if we don't fix affordability, if we don't allow more working class folks to live in these cities, if we don't allow more renters to live in these cities, we could lose them forever. They could become Beverly Hills. Their power structures, because Beverly Hills got a lot of renters, but it's the most expensive city on the West Side, and it has not gone progressive. And, so that's the challenge we're up against. We have a shot clock to really keep these cities. This is why inclusivity and affordability is going to be my number one, because it is a long-term game to make these wins over and over again. Now, let's bring it to transportation. Protected bike facilities were legalized statewide in 2014. They are 10 years old in California. I think it was a Phil Ting bill. I could be wrong on that, but it was 2014. That's when we started having class 4 bikeways. We are still and then like I said, in 2021 was the bill that allowed for quick builds. That bypassed the California Environmental Quality Act, that made these cheaper and quicker projects feasible. So we're still at the beginning of this story. And cities like Culver City, every single time we roll, we haven't seen a city remove a bike lane that's been in place for 3 years, ever. That we saw, what happened in Mar Vista with the recall campaign against Mike Bonin that failed. We've seen like the bike lane that was, I think the PCH bike lane that was it PCH that was removed in 2017?
Wait, what?
Not the PCH. It was like the one at the beach that was removed, and like there was a big bike lash from it, and it was removed.
Isn't that funny that the people that face recalls are always the people that are democratically elected with a majority, and never the people that are indicted by the FBI for corruption and all this? I just think that's so strange. We
were the only city in recent history to go backwards on this, and
to pay money doing it, basically.
And we paid dearly. People like to talk about the law.
Spending money to make streets less safe.
People like to criticize, because the lawsuit cost the city $200,000 in legal fees, according to the city. Well, the city spent $1.something million removing the protected bike lanes. I think it was $1.2 million on this new version. They could have made it permanent, but they decided to spend $1.2 million removing the bike lane, and that was the council majority. And they had to Metro is now asking for $435,000 back because their grant required a separate safe bike facility. And so they're asking for $435,000 back. So this is going to end up costing the city basically nearly $1.7 million to do this new phase of the project. That's $1.7 million that could have gone to a new complete street or a new protected bikeways. And we've seen 2 recent deaths. These were 2 in my neighborhood. Literally, one's a block away. Someone died on National crossing the street, and then someone just died on a motorcycle on the Move Culver City project. So we need to evaluate it. We need to see whether it's effective. But whether no matter what happens to Move, the movement is moving forward, and I do feel like we will eventually make sure that our city has other ways of getting around like that. That is the way that the region is moving. And you basically, if you're a city, you can either be on that train, right? No pun intended, or you can be left behind. Yeah. Put your head in the sand, but it's happening. And you can either be a leader that embraces that, or you can, just drag your feet.
And in Toronto, everyone wants, I don't know if you've been following that, but they're trying to take away these bike lanes that everyone in Toronto, like the majority of people in Toronto want, residents want it, business owners want it, but the premier of the province is like, yeah, but I should have the ultimate say. It's like, why? Like, it's so undemocratic and messed up. But I did what you were saying reminded me something I was telling Kyle before. I had a family from the UK visiting, and it's always interesting to get the perspective of someone that lives in another country or another city, and just they're just honest, unfiltered observations about stuff. And she was asking, why are this? There were so many questions about streets. Basically, she's like, why do you have to push a button to cross the street here? Why are the sidewalks in such bad shape? Why are the sidewalks so dark at night? Why are the streets so wide? And why do people drive pickup trucks in a city? And I was like, almost all of those are about reinforcing the primacy of automobiles. Some of it's also about budgeting, that you're like, we'll just give the money to the police, and then the sidewalks will be fixed, and the copper wire thieves will think twice about stealing copper wiring, because if they just knew there were more cops getting more money, that they wouldn't do that. But I just thought I was like they're all good questions. They're all sort of simple answers, and yet sort of like complicated to undo.
Our traffic engineers didn't start marking the intersections until the past few years of projects. Like, we used to be, it used to be that the bike lanes would end at the intersections. And then it was just. And that's where all the collisions happen, right? Like, we're just now getting out of the level of service mindset, which, sorry, I'm throwing terms around. Level of service is what traffic engineers for decades and decades have used. It's a term that describes how many cars can go through a given street. And that is what traffic engineers have used to determine the quality of a street, literally how many cars can go through it. And we're just getting out of that, and as a state, and trying to pursue mitigating VMT instead, and VMT is vehicle miles traveled. So how, instead of trying to determine how many cars can get through a street and optimizing for that, we're now shifting to how do we get as few miles that a vehicle travels in a region. So we're switching from one key metric or KPI to another. And that's a slow transition. And
yeah, I can remember when new slip lanes opened in my neighborhood, and that was like celebrated. Like, we just spent this many $1 million on building this concrete island to allow cars to go through this intersection even faster.
Slip lane is a separate lane to turn right on that you don't have to stop. So it just lets you keep turning right.
I want to maybe draw a parallel to something that comes up with my work in zero waste. That is, and I think maybe on the more broader political trend of, us moving into a very, into maybe a more conservative national era. With sustainability, you hear a lot of public discourse around, it's going to cost us a lot of money. Like, composting is going to cost us a lot of money. It's a big blah, blah, blah. Why waste your money, right? However, though, the flip side of that is when you adopt zero waste practices, you can do it in such a way that it saves you a lot of money long run. For instance, if your restaurant uses primarily disposable utensils, you have to continuously buy that product, and you're just throwing it into the void. But if you do a full shift to reusables, you have one upfront cost, and your savings increase drastically the more you wash and reuse your utensils, right? When I try to talk to my folks back home, or when I try to talk who are more conservative, or if I try to talk to caterers and craft service people who tend to be very salt of the earth, and they just want to make as much money as they can on these commercial jobs, right? Not necessarily save the planet or whatever, unless their producer wants them to. But I think there is a really good conversation to be had that if you do sustainability well, if you do it smart, you can save a lot of money long run. Or you can use it as like a money generator, And I'm curious, has that crossed your mind as, moving into your role as city council member or at Metro? Like, how do you see that conversation around sustainability as being financially beneficial rather than, just, it's an added cost?
I mean, the sheer cost they've done, studies have been done on the cost to our economy. We know the LA economy wastes billions of dollars just from people being stuck in traffic. We know we lose a lot of money and a lot of productivity that way. We know we lose a ton of money from emergency vehicles and medical expenses from people who get hit by cars. It's the number one cause of death for children is traffic violence. And in 2022 was the number one cause of death for children and people up to, I think, 40 years old. So the expenses are massive. And I think they've done comparisons of the expenses between, from preventative measures and from actually, the impacts of unsafe streets. That's the argument that we have to continue to press, is that these are investments in our communities that do pay off monetarily, and who can put a dollar sign on someone's life.
And it does tie into housing again too, just because, we think about how much money do we spend on fighting homelessness, and it would be so much cheaper to just keep people housed than to allow them to be homeless and then build shelters for them that, are not always ideal, or other solutions. I mean, we spend more money on putting people in prison, which is free room and board. It's like we are providing housing that costs more and is substandard and punitive for people, instead of just building like social housing or public housing that would cost less and could be maintained better than a prison if we didn't, by design, kind of, in the past, ensure that public housing has a bad reputation by doing it so poorly. But while in other countries, in the Netherlands, like 33% of housing is public housing, and there's no stigma because it's not, the government doesn't let it be run down, and they keep it maintained and stuff. But yeah. So I asked on Reddit last night if anyone would have any questions they wanted me to ask you, and one is, are they considering bringing the Culver Boulevard protected bike lanes back?
Yeah, so that they're referring to move. So we just removed them in October, November. We are going to be, like, the city is going to be studying whether, what impacts that has. So I've asked the city, can you ensure that we're studying impacts to cyclists, impacts to transit, how many buses and how many transit riders are stuck behind, cyclists now, how many cyclists are getting stuck. I just have a video of a person on a bike who's approaching a bus in the combined bus bike lane now, because it's been combined, and they have to, and the bus lane is protected, which is in some ways good, because cars, it's not as easy for cars to get into it. But in other ways, like now, if the cyclist is stopped by the bus, and if they get impatient, understandably, like this bus had the wheelchair ramp was coming down to assist someone. So this person on a bike was like, I need to go. So they swerved into the general travel lane. And it's a dangerous situation, right? So understanding the impacts to that, the impacts to traffic. Did traffic actually get better, or is it just a perception? We know a lot with widening projects, which this technically is. We're adding a lane back. That traffic typically gets better in the short term, and then in the long term, it returns to normal or whatever it was previously. So we need to study it, and if it ends up, having the exact same impacts to traffic, no changes, and all we did was remove a bike lane, then I think we should look at what the permanent. We should look at, how do we just prioritize folks' safety if we're not actually improving traffic conditions.
Car users and cyclists / public transit riders are very divided right now. Do you see a future where we can all coexist, and what does that look like to you?
I think we need to, one thing we need to do is maybe stop labeling people as cyclists. Absolutely. I think, so when I'm emailing the city staff, I've stopped saying cyclists and pedestrians, and I've started saying people walking, people on a bike, people first language. People first language.
People aren't like, I'm an avid motorist.
I'm an avid. Yeah. Why is that always only for biking?
Right. It is so coded because because it gets people riled up. Yeah. Because people, I mean, honestly, this is so petty, but I feel like, and not me, I'm just saying, like, people, the number one complaint I hear about cyclists is that they roll through stop. Why don't they have to stop at the stop sign too? And I always say, like, well, why don't you drive the speed limit ever? And also, why don't you want them out of the conflict zone that an intersection is more quickly? Because when I'm rolling through a stop, if I stop completely at a stop sign and then you say, go ahead, you go first, then I have to, like, start back up, and it's going to just take a few seconds longer, but it's like, it will help traffic flow, and it doesn't make it any less safe if cyclists have one little thing that they can do, and that's to yield instead of stop.
But in general, just understanding all of us is we all do all of these things for the most part. I mean, some people don't, but it's about we all at some point are a pedestrian. We are all at some point in a car. Most of us at some point.
We're at least walking to our car. Like you're a pedestrian.
How do we change the language around that? Because these identities are not fixed. As you get older, you do different things. Your preferences change. So that's something that language is.
And at the same time, we always talk about like someone was hit by a car. We don't say, if it was a cyclist, it's the person riding the bike that does the hitting, not they were hit by a bike. But if they're hit by a car, it's not they were hit by a person driving or.
Brief interjection to this. I've noticed because I often bike and one wheel, changing those two. When I'm on my one wheel, drivers are so much nicer to me when I'm at intersections. Part of it, I think, is because I can more clearly denote to them like, oh, hey, you go, I'm going this way, I'm going that way. Harder to do on a bike. But also more often they'll give me the right of way. They'll pause. They'll let me pass. They won't like try to nudge me off the road. But if I'm on my bike at a similar intersection on my path to school, I'll have like a guy at the intersection who's like, bro, hurry up. And I'm biking uphill going to SMC. And like, it takes a lot of effort to move a bike uphill from a dead stop.
A little more effort than just tapping a gas pedal or a brake.
They see it as a political statement.
Absolutely. I think so. And I think there's just resentment too of you. I sometimes I think it's just resentment of you are going somewhere that you're able to go on a bike. And that makes me mad because I'm stuck in a car and it's miserable. Culver City Bus is still running with pandemic service reductions. According to transitrecovery.com, they are only operating 79% service compared to fiscal year 2019. At the same time, ridership has recovered to 85% of pre-COVID ridership. When will Culver City restore bus service? And I just want to say also, Culver City is the second oldest transit agency in Los Angeles County. Formed in 1928, so...
That's good to know. I didn't know Big Blue Bus was older. Yeah, we're old and we're award winning, and I love Culver City Bus. Thank you for the transpo nerds who are like going into transitservice.com.
Transitrecovery.com.
Transitrecovery.com. Wow, incredible.
Never heard of it.
We definitely need to increase service. The biggest thing, move Culver City was a big lightning rod, like I said, in this election. And the thing that I knocked 20,000 doors. And when I got down to it with people on move, what do you not like about it? They would say, there's a ton of traffic. And I would say, okay. And they would say, I don't ever see any buses in the bus lane. I don't see any buses. And sure enough, the max frequency at peak hour of these, we put in a bus lane, the max frequency we have is every 15 minutes, 4 times an hour. That is not enough for people to really change their entire lives around. If you're trying to get to work and you miss that bus, you're kind of screwed. And I asked Metro in my day job, what is your target peak hour frequency, minimum frequency peak hour, like rush hour? And they said for a BRT, for a bus lane with next gen, with the new plans they have. And they said, if you're putting in a bus lane, minimum frequency for rush hour, 10 minutes is our target. So if we're putting in a bus lane and we don't have the frequency, then people don't see it as a wise investment. And they see this empty space there that's underutilized. And so we absolutely have to increase frequency, especially to Fox Hills, where we are about to put down 4,000 or 3,000 more units of housing.
And Fox Hills is still, correct me if I'm wrong, that's one of the more working class areas of Culver City.
And most affordable neighborhood.
Are there any plans to close down and pedestrianize Main Street between Culver and Venice again? They closed it during the pandemic, which brought a lot of life to the area, but reopened it to cars again shortly after, which was disappointing.
It really was disappointing. That was a council decision. So the first council decided to make it just closed or just open to people. See, language. Would just decide to just make it open to people on weekends. And then this conservative council decided to shut that down too. So now it's just cars, except for the farmers market. So what I want to do is create a open streets program so that if a majority of businesses or a certain percentage of businesses say, or residents say, we want this to be an open street, that there's a built-in program to the city. They can apply. If they meet the threshold, they get it. That's what I want to do. And if Main Street wants to do it, I'm so down. I think it really brought so much life to it. But I think ultimately it's about, does that community want it? If they want it and they will be able to utilize it and activate it, it was a wonderful space. It wasn't activated enough. It was when the dining was there, but once they started to wind it down, the restaurants couldn't just they couldn't just keep putting the dining out.
That's what I've hated to see is just al fresco, the reduction in al fresco in so many places. I'm like, I miss that. Because even if I'm not worried about an airborne virus, it's still like Southern California. It's December. It would be nice to eat outside right here. How can we make important changes to our city addressing climate change and sustainability, even if they may bring short-term inconvenience?
I mean, that's all about, I think, who we elect and who we support. Half the battle is electing the right people.
There's almost no cycling in downtown Culver since they took out the bike lanes. Are they planning on investigating any impacts to businesses on the corridor? Buses still get slowed down through downtown Culver due to all the lights. Any ideas of how to fix it? There are a lot of small side streets that each have lights / intersections on Venice / Culver / Washington. Do we really need a residential road connecting to these streets every couple of 100 feet and causing a stoplight? The Washington bike lane disappears around the 405, then reappears again. Any plans to improve the bike lane in that area?
A lot of gripes. No, I appreciate that because there are a lot of lights there's like 5 lights in a 0.2 mile stretch in downtown Culver City. And, some of them are really important and necessary. I think there's arguably one or two that, you could potentially remove if you redesigned a street or two. I think that's something worth exploring because it does slow down our transit and it's difficult to even bike through because of that.
This one I think is kind of a lot of them are expressing kind of the same things. I assume Culver City Bus loses a ton of money on each rider. Have they considered raising fares to increase frequencies?
Fares are really low. To their point, it's $1. It was free during COVID. We have some of the lowest fares, I think, in the country since it's just $1 to ride. I don't think fares are going to be a big source of revenue they're not for transit in general in the LA region because our transit ridership is so low income compared to other regions. I think there are other ways we can do it. Santa Monica just got a bunch of revenue for safe streets infrastructure because they passed a ballot measure that I know Jesse Zwick and other council members are really instrumental in putting on, which added a small tax to private parking garages. So if you want people to park in a private parking garage, the company has to pay a certain tax for certain percentage for every car. They end up, raising, parking fees, a little bit as a result. But, that's a big way to generate revenue that isn't regressive.
We have had disagreements, which we welcome and make room for on this podcast about free transit because I'm not opposed to not paying anything, but my worry is that if transit is free, that will be an excuse to cut service. And that will be like, oh, we have this austerity budget. We're not making any money now. So now we're running buses once every 3 hours or whatever, I just don't want to see it get that much worse. But if you can make money somewhere else,
it needs to be paid for. I think I'm a big proponent of free transit too. It was, I think, a game changer during COVID. Mm-hmm. I saw people taking transit that never took it before because it was free. Especially in LA, like the hassle of getting a tap card. If you're not someone that sees yourself as a transit user, free transit and just hopping on a bus, I saw people taking it that otherwise never did and never did again once it became something they had to get a card for. But it's shown to increase frequency amongst, transit dependent riders. It's not shown to increase ridership much, but that it's an equity play. Like if you're increasing ridership, if you're increasing frequency amongst people who depend on transit, you're making life better for people who depend on transit. And that's a wonderful thing. So I'm a big proponent of it, but we don't want to make transit worse as a result.
Right. And then maybe I'll end with this one. Bubba is awesome. Maybe ask, how does one become awesome like Bubba?
Oh my gosh.
That's from Oh Lord of the Rings.
Oh man, that's really nice. But it was such a village that got this done. Like I am truly, and this is gonna be my shout outs. Like I'm so grateful that I have this opportunity and this responsibility. I feel the weight of responsibility in this seat, and I'm only able to take that seat because people really rallied around a grassroots campaign. And I had a campaign manager who just crushed it. Her name's Olga Lexel. She's a transportation advocate. Anyone who's listening to this podcast probably knows her because she's so active on the West Side.
I still want her to be.
She's a comedy writer, but on the side, she just basically holds down the entire West Side. And like she's on the Metro Public Safety Committee, and she helped run Scott Epstein's campaign in 2022. And she just really knew what she was doing. And her and I met at Streets for All and developed a friendship. And we were able to really activate. I mean, it was boots on the ground. Like it was a ground game. That's why we won. We had a really strong ground game from transportation and mobility advocates. So people who were listening probably helped in some way. And I just really, I'm only here because of them.
Okay. So I guess just to wrap things up, Bubba, is there anything that you would like to plug?
Like find me on social media, but definitely get involved in local advocacy because we can't do this alone. We have, 2 guaranteed years of this, progressive majority. How do we make the most change, do the most good that we can in this time? Get involved with Bike Culver City, please, 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 or get involved in Streets for All. Get involved in, Act LA or any of these, Move LA, any of these organizations that are doing this super vital work, CalBike, because, we have a really profound opportunity on the local level. Let's make use of it. Let's do big things. That's my plug. Get into an organization, attend their meetings. If you want a list of organizations in Culver City that are really important, just go to my website, votefourbubba.com/news. And one of my most recent articles, you can see a big list of organizations.
And it's always a great time to get involved in local politics, especially when you're recovering probably from the national level.
And thank you both for having me on. It was fun.
What about you? You want to plug anything?
I just wrote a big ol' what to get if you're a caterer or a craft services person looking to kit out your thing for what you can actually compost and recycle in LA, because there's a lot of greenwashed products that are very expensive that we can't process at any of the waste haulers in LA. So if that's something you're interested in, or even if you're interested in zero waste and sustainability stuff, that's my latest blog post.
Cool. I'll just because when we met at the book talk back in 2019, that's also when I met multimodal Emily Hahn is a transit person who I just want to give a shout out to her because she had a blog that kind of inspired me to get this podcast started. I also just found out during the recording of this podcast about 2 podcasts that are probably of interest to people that they may not know about. Bike Talk has been on for ages, I guess. They're through KPFK Pacifica, but it's national and maybe international, yeah, because they've had Canadians on too. But it's a really good podcast. And I think it was Jane Ashley that might have mentioned them. And then I checked it out. And I was like, oh my God, so now that I'm subscribed to that. There's another one called Walkin' About. That's just what it sounds like. It's just about walking around Los Angeles. And so, yeah, but we're still the only multimodal one, I feel like. Because it's like there's bikes, there's walking. Anyway, speaking of, I am leading a group of walks around Silver Lake that are focused on architecture, culture, and history. Probably doing about one a month we did our first one just a few days ago, breaking in a 2-day-old pair of boots. Not a good idea. But that's when they arrived. But if you want to find that and join that, just look in all the normal places for Silver Lake walks. The Silver Lake Neighborhood Council, I'll post it on there on the Instagram. I'll post it on the Nobody Drives in LA pod Instagram. I'll post it on my own Instagram. And if the moon rises in normal hours, I co-lead a hike through Griffith Park. It's a very easy hike, but we have seasonal treats and great views and stuff. And if that sounds interesting to you, you gotta contact me for details because it's kind of small and special as it is, and I don't want to make it be too big.
And listeners, as always, too, the robots like it. If you enjoyed this, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, holler at us, argue with us. That's fun too. Smash the follow button, or tap your tap cards or something like that. But anyways, we'll see you out there.